Now, with the results of the Matric class of 2024 fast approaching, parents as well as guardians are advised to show understanding as well as empathy, especially if their children's results do not align with expectations. Now, as pupils wait anxiously, many are struggling with intense stress, anxiety, and even feelings of depression. Let's get a little bit more insights, particularly out of the Eastern Cape, and I guess a broader discussion on education as well. Fundile Gade is the Eastern Cape Education MEC and joins us in studio now. Baba, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. I mean, it's not every day you get the Eastern Cape's own MEC joining us in studio here in Johannesburg, so we want to thank you for that. I guess a good place to start is by just talking about the numbers themselves. I mean, if we go through the matric pass rate, maybe for the last 5 years, if we will, we started 76.5% in 2019, 68.1% in 2020. That was that drawdown that we saw in that period, COVID, a very difficult year. Then up to 73.1% in 2021. 2022 had 77.3%, and then what is considered a success because it's above 80 finally then for the Eastern Cape last year was 81.4%. How do we build on that?
We have made our homework, I would say so, because we were driving a strategy that is based on the throughput in various schools and also from various districts. Because remember, we are a rural province and we've got a massive quintile 1, 2, 3 schools. So in essence, it means you have got more schools that are hosting children that are coming from destitute families. Yeah. So you needed a pro-poor policies of government for you to sustain them so that the system cannot kick them out. So you need an intensive interventions of government, both in terms of resources and also in terms of how to manage the transition as they grow with the system. We made it sure that one, we have got a consistent target of 5% every academic year. That's why your figures talks to that. Yeah. And that's one. Two, we have to make sure that we upscale the performance of the districts so that you can at least have a leverage of all of them participating in the League of 80s. And we have succeeded in doing that. And lastly, we have to find a way of how do we make sure that the choice of subjects is not stressful to the kids. Because remember, we have to respond to the National Development Plan so that you don't just have kids that pass in the system without any noble idea what the nation would want to look like in the next coming 20 to 30 years. So your campus must always inform your skills production, which is the NTP. So that's basically how we have structured ourselves in terms of content, but also in terms of the ability of the state to make such kind of interventions.
I mean, those are all the things that have clearly worked and have brought you to where we are right now. We may not necessarily know the figure for 2024 as yet, but you spoke about building what is a pro-poor sort of stance on understanding, particularly the Eastern Cape's education system. Does that require more funding, do you think? And I mean, one can say more funding than the rest of the country, but just more money because it's an understanding that because of the rural nature of the Eastern Cape, more needs to be given, more needs to be done by government.
Yes, for starters, you need to make sure that you have got a better access to the schooling system.
Is that roads and
roads, infrastructure that has been built by government?
Is that getting better?
Yes, quite better now. If you go to the province is an infrastructure construction site all over across. Yeah. And also, if you look in terms of the performance of the educators themselves, bring in incentives so that they can enjoy being educators within the sector, and also try to motivate the officials that you have in terms of having an upward mobility within the system itself, because you have got seasoned administrators. That's what is fortunate about us. We may have not been performing in the past 15 years good enough, but you have got an advantage of having a very seasoned cohort of principals of schools that runs self-sufficient schools. And that's why it was not a surprise for me that 81.4% last year, because they've been doing that quite with a very strong support system of the SGBs, with a very support system of the academics. The universities in the space have developed programs for us that also talks to the content gaps that the kids and educators, both of them, might have in the process, because you must be able to trace each and every kid in the system. If, for example, that kid from school A has been performing in level 2 or 3, you must be able to say, where does this kid come from? Who was the teacher 5 years of this teacher? Has this kid moved beyond level 3 in terms of the performance as they go through the system? And therefore, begin to have a strategy that talks to both the educator and as well as the learner. Because ultimately, that kid must pass.
But that sounds resource intensive, Baro.
Exactly.
And so, which means that you're going to need teachers that, yes, you say that you've been able to, who you've managed to keep for quite a while, who understand the system very well. But the other part of it is that they then need to understand how to grow learners to be getting them to that level 4 and above, etc. How do you do that right? How do you educate educators into getting that right? And is it also then again a money thing?
We have established 4 institutes in the province.
Okay.
One deals with leadership and governance. They purely for educators.
Yeah.
Because institutions of learning must be governed and managed properly. That's the beginning.
Yeah.
And the other one is meant for maths and science, because we are a maths and science province. More than 50,000 of those kids that were writing examinations as we speak, that are expecting results tomorrow. More than 50,000 of them were doing maths and physics. So any strategy that does not talk to maths and physics in the province is bound to fail. So you need a very strong support system of maths and science teachers, and also have some sessions with the dean of faculties that produces maths and science in the universities that we have in the country. So consistently we have been able to do so, but also have some memorandum of understanding with the dean of faculties for, again, with maths and science. For example, in Nelson Mandela University, we have one. Also in the Western Cape University, we have got one. In WUSU, we have got one. So that you introduce practical laboratory and science methodology within the kids, so that they don't just learn physical concepts outside of the scope of being practical in terms of what must be done in those particular fields as gateway subjects.
Baba, I won't ask you when and which year you received your results. That's a long time ago. But for me, I received my matric results in 2006.
Yeah.
That gives away my age a little bit as well then.
Yes.
But when that happened, I remember walking to the petrol station to go buy a newspaper. And I walked all that way, got the newspaper, and I cried all the way back home. Because while my name was in the newspaper, I didn't get a distinction. And I cried, and I cried and cried. And along that way, anything could have really happened to me. How do we keep kids understanding that it goes beyond just these results? Not that these results don't matter, but it's about these results and the future. Because I'm definitely not where anybody thought I would be right now. In fact, I think I've superseded a lot of expectations to some.
Look, the schooling system we have has got many challenges as a country in general. There are social problems that need to be addressed. So for me, we have introduced the psychosocial services within the schooling system itself.
Is that for students and teachers?
Yes. So that you don't just get them ready academically, but they must also be emotional and psychological ready. Eliminate anything that might distract them in terms of the social throughput that might be there. So we have made our homework because that's why we had a free examination irregularities examinations in the country.
Yes.
It's because you have eliminated any barriers that could distract the learners, that could distract also the educators that must monitor them. That's one. But secondly, you need to tighten up the systems. In the past, you were writing names of kids in the charge sheets,
yes,
that issued the results. Now you are writing examinations numbers.
Yes.
Just to secure the privacy of the learner. And that's what was the contestation between ourselves.
100%, and I was about to ask you that. I mean, what's your
Yes.
thoughts on that process?
Yes.
Should we still be doing it on newspapers? Should it now be happening in slightly different? Because the privacy is still the issue.
Yes, but we should be doing it, in my view, because we are no longer writing names. It's only you who knows your exam number.
Yes.
And but also, it gives us a bit of a security in terms of the numbers that are written, in terms of the examination numbers. But equally, the consent of the parents in that process becomes critical. Because remember, government can be litigated at any given time in terms of the PIA Act. So you needed a well-calculated plan on communications so that you don't then, in the interest of making the public aware, you become vulnerable legally. So otherwise, we have dealt with that question in that particular form.
Let's talk about the Bella Act. How does that impact you at all, if in any way, then for upcoming years, as that obviously begins to get implemented, then heading into the remainder of this year and next?
The Bella Act is overdue.
Yeah.
The Bella Act is overdue because you'll remember that we are a nation whose history is a history of unresolved issues. So the Bella Act must assist us in transforming the sector. One, in terms of the policies on language policy, and takes that authority to where it belongs. Because sometimes the exclusive nature of the character of the schooling system you have currently is born out of the exclusive language policies that some schools adopt.
Yeah.
Not precisely because you don't have capacity to learn there, but a prerequisite for you to be accessing that institution, you need to be one of those students or learners that are well-versed with the language that is being taught there. So if you talk inclusive education in total as a policy, one, the language policy must be resolved.
Yeah.
Two, the resource mechanism of government must appreciate the dynamic nature of the society that we are, because you have got a plethora of languages that you have. For example, the introduction of the sign language now,
Yes.
which is also a critical question, because if not resolved, it's not just a matter of education. When that kid gets hurt in the road, she or he can't converse with the police that are inquiring on the case, can't converse with the medical practitioners in the hospital, can't converse with the judiciary system in the court of law.
Yeah.
So the issue of diversifying the education sector becomes a critical question. And I'm saying, Bella Bill is overdue in the country.
Yeah. I want to just close off, perhaps, if I can, on the issue. You spoke about it a little bit earlier, future subjects, the NDP, and making sure that grows. My concern about the NDP is that 2030 is around the corner. Being able to reach the goals that are entailed in the NDP really need to be re-looked at. Achieving that will be very tough from here. How do we get ourselves future ready? Get all our students future ready from a basic education front. We haven't even started tertiary education, because that ultimately can be conversations had with companies as well. But understanding even from a basic education front, nobody's fighting, whether it be languages like history or whatever the case may be. But it's about understanding why do we need that, and where do we go with subjects like that, for example. How do we get our students future ready?
As a country, we have offered a three-streamed model policy for us to diversify the curriculum in the country. in general. But in the Eastern Cape province, that's why we took a very bold decision to introduce Aviation School.
Yes.
On the 17th of January, a couple of days from now. Precisely because we must be able to look at what sectors is the nation running short of, and what are the implications of an aviation sector monopolized by foreign nationals. What are the implications of that? And also, what should be the role of education in the preservation of the security of the nation, but also in terms of trying to rebuild the growthless economy that we have. So from time to time, you need to revisit the curriculum, look at the blind spots, what are the signals of the NTP? Have you achieved the architects that you would want in 2030? Have you achieved the civil engineering faculties that are needed for you to be able to build your own roads? For example, I've been arguing for quite some time in the Eastern Cape to say, for example, if we build roads, but people that are building roads are coming outside of the country, then there is a serious question mark on the education system that we have in the country. Because you can't by now export skill. By now. You can't be exporting skill. So there must be some shift in terms of what should then be a priority of government and how does sector departments contribute in the broader scheme of things.
Again, I was going to ask, is it a funding issue, a policy issue, a prioritization issue?
No, it's a prioritization issue because the money is there and also the funding is there. It's just a question of doing what is right about the money.
Yeah. Fantastic. Baba, you know, they usually say your name stands for something. Mine is Arabile. I'm always looking for answers.
Yes.
Fundile. I mean, it makes sense when we continue to talk about education. Baba, thank you so much for the time. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. The Eastern Cape Education MEC, Fundile Gade, joining us there to unpack that education ahead, of course, of the grade 12 performance contention and question mark for the class of 2024. Of course, those results anticipated this coming week. We'll have stories on that, of course, right here on Newzroom Afrika. So please do join us for all of that. Thank you so much again, Baba, for all of that.